All right. Good morning, everybody. It looks like everybody who's tried to log in has logged in, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Alan Lilly. I'm the presiding hearing officer of the State Water Resources Control Board's Administrative Hearings Office. Today is November 3rd, 2022, and it's just after 9 a.m. This is the sixth day of the Administrative Hearings Office hearing on the court's reference to the State Water Resources Control Board in City of Marina versus RMC Lonestar. And unless there is any, first of all, thank you all of those who participated in the site visit yesterday. That was very informative for me and my colleagues. And I certainly appreciate the logistical support, particularly from Mr. Schertzinger for Marina Coast Water District and Mr. Crooks for Cal-Am. And Mr. Neudecker, your clients are not on board, so I'll have to ask you to thank them. But certainly we appreciate the, I'll say the hospitality we received from CEMEX, so we were able to go on the CEMEX property as well. So with that, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and get started. Today, we are set to hear the testimony from Lane Long, the City of Marina City Manager. I have determined, I think it's an appropriate time limits are 30 minutes for the summary of the direct testimony. And Mr. Long does have two sets of slides, which I appreciate. And then we'll have a maximum of 30 minutes for questions from Marina Coast Water District. And then we will have questions from CEMEX and Cal-Am. And Mr. Neudecker, you have indicated before you want to ask questions of Mr. Long. Do you have an opinion as to whether it makes sense for you to go before or after Cal-Am's attorneys in your questioning?
I think I can go before. And okay. We had also talked previously about a very brief opening. I assume the city is going to give an opening, and we had talked about me giving an opening after the city. It will be brief, and I'm talking 3 minutes. But I do think it will help frame my questions.
Okay, and thank you for reminding me about both your opening statement and the city. Somehow I didn't have that in my notes. So before I administer the oath to Mr. Long, I will ask City of Marina, Mr. Spalding or Ms. Meisenheimer, does either of you want to give a brief opening statement for the City of Marina?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay. Time limit wise, I sort of targeted about 10 minutes now with the understanding you'll have about 10 minutes for the December hearing. Is that going to be sufficient for you?
I think so, certainly within a minute.
Okay, well, if you squeak over for a couple of minutes, that will be okay. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll start with Mr. Spalding and then Mr. Neudecker. If I forget again, please remind me but then we'll go to your opening statement. I think logically that'll make the most sense. And then we will proceed with Mr. Long's testimony. Okay, so it's 9:05. Mr. Spalding, you may proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lilly, and good morning, everyone. The City of Marina is a culturally diverse, working-class city located on the coast in northern Monterey County. The city is completely dependent on groundwater in the Salinas Valley groundwater basin for all of its water needs. And of course, MCWD is its water provider. The industrial well field for the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project would be constructed within a 39-acre easement area on Marina's sand dunes and on Marina's beach. At that location, it would extract 15.5 million gallons per day of groundwater from the 180, 400-foot aquifer subbasin, which has been designated by the Department of Water Resources of one of only 21 groundwater basins or subbasins in California that is critically overdrafted. The extractions would occur 24/7, 365 days a year, during high rainfall years and during low rainfall years. And unlike agricultural extractions, they would occur continuously every season of the year. However, there is no surplus water available in this subbasin for these new extractions. Now, question 8A from the court referral order raises the important question of Cal-Am's lack of water rights. This issue has been the Achilles heel of the project from the very beginning. It is undisputed that Cal-Am has no overlying, appropriative, or prescriptive groundwater rights to extract groundwater from this subbasin. We also know that Cal-Am was not granted any groundwater extraction rights by Cal-Am as part of the easement. Rather,
I think you mean by CEMEX.
I'm sorry.
I think you mean by CEMEX or RMC Pacific. You said Cal-Am was not granted any rights by Cal-Am.
Was not granted rights by the easement that CEMEX granted to Cal-Am.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you for the correction. Rather, Cal-Am hopes to use the salvaged or developed water rights theories to allow it to appropriate groundwater. Now, in its trial brief, Cal-Am concedes that no California water rights case authorizes use of either of these theories in the saline water context. And Cal-Am goes on to say that this complete lack of precedent is inconsequential, but in fact, it could well be fatal here. Clearly, Cal-Am does not meet the legal requirements of these theories. It would not be adding any new benefit to the basin in the form of a new supply of groundwater. Rather, to the contrary, it plans to extract groundwater and export it out of the basin, except for a small increment that would go to Castroville. Cal-Am and CEMEX also cling to the fiction that the California Public Utilities Commission somehow found that Cal-Am held water rights for the project. Clearly, the PUC did not reach that determination. In short, Cal-Am cannot sustain its burden to establish two things. Number one, that the project will protect beneficial uses and basin conditions. And number two, that it will not cause injury to groundwater users in the basin. Now, we all know that groundwater modeling is at the center of these hearings, and for very good reason. Cal-Am is hoping that its modeling will provide some kind of scientific basis to support its salvaged water theories. However, to the contrary, the modeling to date has been wholly inadequate and fails to provide the requisite scientific support. As we have seen, the Cal-Am model has undergone major surgery at least 3 times to address its many flaws. Now, by the way, I want to make it clear that I am only addressing today the versions of the groundwater model that we have had time to evaluate. The latest model, which we learned of in August of this year, we are still evaluating, and that is, of course, the subject of the upcoming round of hearings. So my remarks on the modeling do not cover the latest 2022 model, but certainly of the models that we have addressed, they contain multiple deficiencies, some of which were explored on cross-examination, and they fail to provide the requisite scientific support. Many of these deficiencies were identified by Weiss Associates, who were the independent groundwater hydrologists who were engaged by the Coastal Commission to evaluate groundwater modeling that was done. There are a number of groundwater modeling issues that have come to the fore in these hearings and in the testimony. Number one, CalAm fails to adopt proper usable groundwater benchmarks and has not used them correctly to create ocean water percentage calculations. For example, all of CalAm's OWP calculations are based on an assumed freshwater benchmark of 500 milligrams per liter for TDS. This is not the standard for protection of beneficial uses, and this is not standard that is used for the potential drinking water use. Secondly, the models in almost every case created by CalAm do not have the correct seawater gradients. Third, initial conditions and boundary conditions for many of the models are either completely opaque and unexplained, or they are incorrect. Finally, it appears that CalAm has not properly taken recharge, primarily rainfall, into account. Now, Weiss Associates tried to correct some of these issues, and Weiss then made new model runs to determine the ocean water percentage that should be calculated here. And instead of coming up with the same numbers as CalAm, the Weiss Associates model numbers range from 78% of ocean water to about 92%, which translates into a freshwater percentage of between 22% and 8%. And all of this is in CalAm Exhibit 48, tables 2 and 3. Now, CalAm's experts also attempt to trivialize the important findings in the AEM surveys. In fact, AEM is a state-of-the-art groundwater imaging technology that produces a 3D picture of groundwater conditions. It is very well accepted around the world and well accepted here in California. These published AEM studies, and there were two major ones, revealed that there are large areas of fresh groundwater in both the dune sand aquifer and the 180-foot aquifer. Now, these findings fundamentally conflict with the simplistic approach of CalAm's experts, who use a, quote, bathtub analogy to argue that all of the basin's water mixes together and none of it is usable. To the contrary, these aquifers are not bathtubs. They are complicated and heterogeneous groundwater bodies. And of course, CalAm's models fail to take any of this data into account. One important issue in the group 2 questions in the court's referral order relates to the 500 acre-foot per year groundwater extraction limitation. It appears that CalAm's primary expert has misunderstood the question from the court, and he asserts that less than 500 acre-feet a year of groundwater, but no more, would be extracted over the long term by this project. In fact, his assertions defy the actual test slant well production run results. You'll recall that slant well operated for almost 3 years at a full production 1 capability. And that determined a 90.5% ocean water percentage. That translates into a 9.5% freshwater percentage. And then when you convert it to acre feet a year, it comes to 1,650 acre feet per year, which is more than 3 times the 500 acre-foot per year benchmark identified by the court. And all of that is based on the unrealistic 500 milligram per liter standard, which is not even the correct standard. Non-Cal-Am experts, including Weiss, calculated ocean water percentages that result in freshwater total extractions of up to 4,000 acre-feet per year, which is 8 times the standard asked by the court. So in closing, in this phase of the AHO hearing, the court, we will present City Manager Lane Long, as you have recognized, Mr. Lilly, to testify. He will briefly provide testimony regarding the city's water supply and water concerns, as well as authenticate a few key documents that provide background and context for the issues referred to the AHO by the court. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spalding. And the way we just discussed, Mr. Newdecker, we will have you give your opening statement now, and then we will shift to Mr. Long's testimony. So please proceed.
Thank you. So I want to start by framing CEMEX's role in this litigation. CEMEX is in this lawsuit only because it presently owns the land on which the wells for Cal-Am's project will be built. The city and MCWD sued CEMEX, alleging that if the project goes forward, it will result in a breach of a 1996 agreement between a bunch of parties, including the city, MCWD, and a company called RMC Lonestar, which owned what we're now calling the CEMEX property in 1996. That 1996 agreement is typically referred to as the annexation agreement. Now, CEMEX believes that the legal issue regarding the alleged breach or anticipatory breach of the annexation agreement is not part of this referral. The court referred 8 specific hydrological questions to the State Water Resources Control Board, and whether there's going to be a breach of the annexation agreement is not one of those questions. However, Mr. Long, the City of Marina city manager, submitted direct testimony purporting to put at least some of those questions in context. For example, Mr. Spalding just touched on this one. One of the court's questions refers to 500 acre-feet of water. And Mr. Long says, well, I know where that question came from. It came from the annexation agreement because the annexation agreement imposes a 500 acre-feet limit on Lonestar. So that's where that question came from. Now, Cal-Am moved to exclude most or all of that background testimony as irrelevant to this proceeding. The AHO denied that motion in limine. So as of right now, Mr. Long's background testimony is going to come into evidence. And certain aspects of that background testimony are just flat out wrong. And I'll point out 2 instances. The first is Mr. Long says the annexation agreement was effective as of August 1996 because that's when everyone signed it. And that's not true. The annexation agreement has never been effective as to Lonestar and by extension CEMEX. An express condition precedent of the effectiveness of the annexation agreement as to Lonestar is annexation of the CEMEX property into the MCWRA benefit assessment zones 2 and 2A. That never happened. Never. So the agreement has never been effective as to Lonestar or Cemex. Second, Mr. Long says that the project will undermine the 2017 sand mining settlement agreements between Cemex and the California Coastal Commission, the State Lands Commission, and the city. That's not true either. In fact, the 2017 sand mining settlement agreements specifically recognize, authorize, and permit CalAM's option and easement to build the desalination project. Mr. Long's testimony is misleading in a number of other ways too. For instance, I think implicit in his testimony is the notion that the annexation agreement, even to the extent it is effective, applies to CalAM or CalAM's project, and it doesn't. The annexation agreement applies only to the signatories and their successors and assigns. This is assuming it was ever effective. And CalAM is neither of those. So, look, you haven't heard a lot from me so far in this referral proceeding. You probably won't hear a lot from me going forward. But, to the extent this background information is being considered, I think it's important that, we give a full, complete, and accurate picture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neudecker. I do want to clarify one thing for all of you. Listen carefully. This is important. And I was thinking about this last night. I haven't made a final decision on this, but my tentative plan is after we complete the testimony, either in December or potentially thereafter, if I decide we need another round. When we get to closing briefs, I'm going to ask the parties to prepare and file proposed draft reports of referee. Basically, you've all been in court. It's sort of like preparing a proposed statement of decision for the court to consider. I think I will also allow the parties to file legal briefs if they want to, if there are arguments they want to make that don't sort of logically fit within the scope of a proposed report of referee, and that may be. But the reason I'm saying this now is I'm fairly confident that the background section of the draft report I prepare will talk about these agreements. You can look at they're posted on our webpage, are the prior orders that the State Water Board has adopted, prepared by my office, which frankly track the format of prior State Water Board orders in water right matters that the State Board adopted before my office was ever formed. They almost always have a background statement of facts section and then discussion, and then they get into the issues and the analysis of the facts and the legal issues. So what I am thinking will happen, Mr. Neudecker is correct. A lot of these legal issues, the court did not refer to the Water Board. So obviously the Water Board will not be including decisions on them or conclusions on them in the report of referee. But I do think the background is important. And the way I anticipate the background section reading is it won't be very long, but it'll be a brief discussion of each of these agreements, at least the annexation agreement and the settlement agreement, when they were adopted, who signed them, and so forth. And then probably a paragraph each of, parties A and B contend that, on these disputed issues, there are these disputed issues, parties A and B contend that, and their contentions. Parties C and D contend this. And then just in case just to make sure there's no confusion, it'll then state the court did not refer these issues to the Water Board for decision, so the Water Board is not going to be deciding them. But that, I hope that helps all of you understand. That's why I denied CalAM's motion in limine regarding this background information, because I do think it provides some context. I don't know whether or not the 500 acre foot per year limitation in the annexation agreement is going to be relevant to the 500 acre foot per year issues that the court has referred to the State Water Board. That's, of course, something you can address in your briefs. But I do think having that background will give the report, and particularly the board members when they're reading the proposed report, that context. So anyway, I wanted to let you know that's how I plan to address these background issues. I'm going to discuss them and simply state the parties succinctly as I can, the parties' contentions on those issues, and then confirm that the court did not refer those to the water board for decision, so the water board's not going to decide them. I think that's pretty clear. We're going to decide the issues or prepare our proposed decision on report on the issues the court referred to the board, and that's all. So anyway, I hope that's helpful clarification going forward for all of you. They're not singling out you, Mr. Neudecker. You just sort of raised the issue more directly than anyone else has so far, but I want everyone to know that. I do have one question for you, Mr. Neudecker, if you know, and I'm going to ask you partly because you have not designated any CEMEX witnesses. And my question is this, and of course you're not testifying under oath, and this is really probably more the nature of argument than facts anyway, but why did RMC Lonestar enter into the 1996 annexation agreement? Were there any benefits? And I haven't gone through the whole agreement, but did it have any stated benefits to RMC Lonestar? It clearly had burdens on them. And I'm just wondering if you can shed any light on that question. It's more a background issue for me than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it would be annexation of the property would be the primary benefit. And as you'll see.
Why was that a benefit to the landowner to be annexed to the city?
So that's a detailed question that I'd have to get somebody with personal knowledge to answer. I would be speaking out of turn for my client if I did so.
Okay.
But I mean, as you'll see through my cross of Mr. Long, I mean, our main point, or one of our main points, is the main thing that Lonestar bargained for in the agreement, it didn't get ever.
Okay. All right. Well, that's enough. I appreciate, I'm sort of putting you on the spot to answer a question that you're probably not really in a position to answer, and your answer wouldn't be under oath anyway. So it was just something I was wondering about, but thanks for the clarification. Okay. Well, with that, thank you for your opening statement. And it's just 9:30, so we will go ahead and start with Mr. Long's, the summary of his testimony. So, Mr. Long, there you are. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, under penalty of perjury, that the testimony you will be giving in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And I have in front of me Exhibit Marina 1. Is that, in fact, your direct testimony for this proceeding?
Yes.
And I have Exhibit Marina 25, is that your rebuttal testimony for this hearing?
25, I believe so.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm not trying to pull a fast one here. Exhibit Marina 25 is titled Rebuttal Testimony of Lane P. Long on behalf of City of Marina.
Yes.
All right.
I don't have any of that in front of me.
Okay, that's fine. Well, you may need it depending on how the questions go. And then we have Exhibit Marina 32 is your direct testimony slides, and Exhibit Marina 33 is your summary slides. So before we put that up, first of all, which City of Marina attorney is going to ask Mr.
I am.
Long?
I
Okay,
am,
so
Mr. Lilly.
Mr. Spalding, do you want us to go ahead and display Exhibit Marina 32, which is Mr. Long's summary slides?
Well, I have one preliminary matter.
Okay.
I wanted to remind the court, remind all of us here today that you have excluded certain paragraphs from Mr. Long's testimony. in certain exhibits. So in the direct testimony, that was paragraphs 34 to 49. And I believe that also excluded, the order also excluded exhibits 12 through 18 of the direct.
Okay, yeah, I know that's in the order, but I'll just mark that here as well. I do remember the order. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and due to the timing of the motion, which occurred before, well, actually, the resolution of the motion to exclude happened after rebuttal testimony was put in. Mr. Long has 3 paragraphs of rebuttal testimony that also relate to Marina's beneficial use of groundwater for the vernal ponds. And those are paragraphs 18 to 20. And although not explicitly excluded by you, it sounds like they would be within the scope of what would have been intended. So I wanted to bring that to your.
Okay, yes, and that was probably a timing question, but you are correct. Based on my prior ruling on Cal-Am's motion in limine, those paragraphs are excluded as well. So that means please don't ask him questions about those when you ask him to summarize. And then, of course, none of the other attorneys should ask him questions about those paragraphs or those exhibits either. Okay, so thank you for that reminder.
And if we could put up slide or Marina exhibit 32, please.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do that, and I asked you to keep this to 30 minutes, so it's 9:32. Well, we'll start it at 9:32. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Long. Can you summarize your testimony using the written slide?
And
yes,
Mr. Long, you've been here for others, but just say next slide whenever you want us to go to the next slide, and we will go to the next slide.
Sure, thank you. Yes, next slide.
Okay, and just for the record, we're on exhibit Marina 32, and we're up to slide 2. Go ahead.
So I'm going to give a brief summary of my direct and my rebuttal testimony, and these are 6 primary points that I'm going to cover in my summary. Next slide, please. Now, I've been the city manager here in Marina for almost 10 years. As city manager, I'm responsible to oversee all city operations, implement the policies and direction of the city council, provide our services as efficiently, effectively as possible, and to make sure we have the infrastructure that we need in our city to meet our demands of our population. I have over 30 years experience directing, managing cities and all aspects of their operations. I've been serving in cities in California and Utah both. I have a master's degree in public administration. Next slide, please.
Okay, and for the record, we are now on slide 4 of exhibit Marina 32.
This project really concerns us, especially from an environmental justice point of view. And we think that it really threatens the core fabric of our community. You know, we have a very diverse working class community. 2/3 of our community is non-white. We consider ourselves a melting pot of Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese, all different Asians, African American, Hispanic, Samoan, Tongan, Fijian. They say we speak 52 different languages and dialects in our community. We really are a very diverse community, and we are happy about that. We celebrate that. But yet we are a disadvantaged community. 1/3 of our population is below the 200% of the federal poverty level. And even given that, we think that we are one of the best places to live on the peninsula. But it was obvious even to the California Coastal Commission, and this is from their staff report in August 2020 on pages 20 2 and 101, I just want to highlight out. The project also involves the most significant environmental justice concerns the Commission has considered since it adopted an environmental justice policy. This is not just the City of Marina saying this. This is the Coastal Commission. This is absolutely so obvious. Next slide, please.
Okay, we're on slide 5.
Thank you. Marina will not receive any water produced by this project. This project wants to construct and operate and build facilities through and around Marina, and yet we are not in Cal-Am service area. And all the benefit for this project will go to Carmel, Pacific Grove, Monterey, Seaside, Delray Oaks, Sand City. We consider that a huge injustice. This project, we believe, will threaten and hinder Marina Coast Water District's ability to protect our groundwater and to provide quality water to our city. Next slide, please.
All right, slide 6.
When we talk about Marina's water supply, water really is the lifeblood of our city. And we not only need water for drinking, but this water services our sensitive habitats, our endangered species, our wetlands, our vernal ponds. And we saw that yesterday as a gorgeous day, but following a rain, and that replenishes our dune sand aquifer. And that water is just vital for every aspect of us living. 100% of our drinking water comes from Marina Coast Water District. We rely on them 100% for water that comes from our groundwater basin. And we have huge concerns regarding the impact of this project on our groundwater. Marina has affordable water rates. I believe the MCWD has said that their water rates are less than half of the Cal-Am service area rates. And this project threatens our affordable water rates if it contaminates and destroys our groundwater basin. And given the socioeconomic makeup of our community, we think it's essential that we keep our water rates affordable. Next slide, please.
We're on slide 7.
Marina Coast Water District has far more expertise, and they provided more information on the water supply, but I wanted to highlight out a couple things. Again, 100% of our water supply comes from 7 active groundwater production wells, known as wells 29, 30, 31, 34, 35, 10, and 11. And my testimony comes from their 2020 master plan. 3 of these wells are in the 29, 30, and 31. Their source water is the 180 and 400-foot aquifer. Next slide, please.
Okay, we're on slide 8.
The CMEX property is a really special property to our city, and we kind of saw that yesterday on our tour. It is 400 acres of coastal land that is located in our city limits. This sand mining operation has been devastating to this 400 acres of property since the early 1900s. And I think you can get a sense of that as you stood and you looked at the beauties of the coast, and you looked at all the impacts of the mining and the CMEX area. You can contrast that, and pursuant to our settlement agreement, this industrial use is going to be converted to a use of conservation and recreation purposes in perpetuity. And that is what we are looking for, this beautiful 400 acres of land. Next slide.
All right, we're on slide 9.
We've talked about this annexation agreement, and this is Marina Exhibit 8. And this was entered into between the City of Marina, RMC Lonestar, which is CEMEX's predecessor, Marina Coastal Water District, and the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. The purpose of this agreement was to establish a framework to reduce seawater intrusion and protect the groundwater basin, and it also provided terms and conditions for the annexation of certain territory into the Marina service area. Next slide, please.
We're on slide 10.
This agreement provided explicit groundwater extraction limitation provisions. I just want to highlight out Lonestar shall limit withdrawal and use of groundwater from the basin to Lonestar's historical use of 500 acre-feet of groundwater. This project will extract more than 17,000 acre-feet of groundwater a year, a little bit more than 500 acre-feet. Next slide, please.
All right, slide 11.
This is referring to Marina Exhibit 9, and this is CalAM's asserted easement on the property. CEMEX conveyed an easement over certain portions of the property. This is about 35.9 acres of beach and the sand dunes area, and this goes down to the mean high tide line. And this easement is for slant wells, structures, related facilities, and pipelines. For that, there is also a 3.5 access easement across the beach and the dunes areas. Next slide.
Slide 12.
CEMEX and CalAM also had an option agreement, and I want to highlight out a couple of sections of that option agreement. This is Exhibit 10, Marina Exhibit 10. Section 9D, CalAM is not granted any groundwater rights or withdrawal rights by CEMEX under this agreement. Section 10C2, CalAM has responsibility to comply with water extraction laws, ordinances, and rules. And Section 11G, the easement is not intended to interfere with the rights of third parties, if any, or CEMEX's obligation to third parties. Next slide, please.
We're on slide 13.
The California Coastal Commission certified City of Marina's local coastal program in 1982. That authorizes the City of Marina to be the lead agency for the issuance of coastal development permits for development projects in our defined coastal zone. In January 2018, CalAM submitted an application to the City of Marina for a coastal development permit for portions of the project located in the coastal zone. In March 2019, the City of Marina Planning Commission held a public hearing, and they denied CalAM's application for a coastal development permit. Next slide, please.
We're on slide 14.
Marina Exhibit 11 is the decision of the Marina City of Marina Planning Commission denying the coastal development permit. And they stated numerous reasons for the denial, but I wanted to highlight a couple findings. So finding 4-22, the coastal development permit would not be consistent with the protective policy avoiding depletion of groundwater. The Planning Commission finds that depletion of the groundwater supply is an eminent and very serious coastal act concern for this project. And then later on 4-18 through 4-21, the project will deplete groundwater supplies and is therefore not in compliance with the local coastal program or coastal act. And then CalAM has filed an appeal with the California Coastal Commission, which remains pending. Next slide, please.
We're on slide 15.
The sand mining operations at CEMEX began in the early 1900s. And CEMEX was the last, my understanding, was the last sand mining plant on the coastline of any coast in the United States. And its impacts are very devastating. And so in 2017, our city council passed a resolution, and we determined that CEMEX was a public nuisance, and it violated sections of the Marina Municipal Code, and we began appropriate enforcement action. That culminated in Marina Exhibit 19, a historic settlement agreement reached in 2017 that brought an end to the sand mining operations by December 31st, 2020. Working together, the City of Marina, the California Coastal Commission, the State Lands Commission shut down this project and laid a path for this beautiful piece of land to finally be restored back to a condition where it will preserve conservation, will provide low impact recreation, will provide access to the northern part of our city and also for public education purposes. Next slide, please.
We're on slide 16.
These issues really are critically important to the City of Marina. Our groundwater is vital for us to survive, and this has our residents very nervous. I managed a similar sized city, and I'd been there just a few months, and I woke up one Sunday morning to panic calls from our residents that they're out of water. People are turning on their faucets and turning on the showers, and they did not have any water. And certain areas of our city just had to run out of water. And our springs and wells that our best experts had designed our water system around, they stopped flowing because of a multi-year drought that the region was in. And so we immediately implemented restrictions and rationing. And over the next couple of years, redesigned our water system. And so I can see, and I've managed cities where groundwater, while it's hard to understand all the aspects of what happens underneath the ground. And when you think you know the best, I've seen the worst, where we thought we were sufficient, we ran out. Our community, our minority populations, our mayor and our council, our business groups are all concerned that this massive groundwater extraction of billions of gallons a year that's contemplated by this project will worsen seawater intrusion, deplete our groundwater supplies, will potentially contaminate our wells, and will be a huge threat to our city. You know, water is just fundamental to our social and economic viability of our city. Our quality of life depends on it. And this project, with all the best science and all the known unknowns, simply poses a gamble and a risk that could be catastrophic. That's one that our city can't afford to make. And that concludes the summary of my written.
Okay, do you want to just, Mr. Spalding, do you want to just go right on to Exhibit Marina 33 and have Mr. Long summarize his rebuttal testimony with those slides?
Yes, thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and do that. So Ms. Mullen, please display Exhibit Marina 33. And Mr. Long, you know the drill. Just say next slide whenever you want us to move on. Right now we have Exhibit Marina 33, slide 1 up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lilly. Next slide, please.
We'll go to slide 2.
The regional project approved by the CPUC, this happened before I was city manager of the city. So I've been here since 2013. And so I'm going to speak about this just from the things that I've learned from people in the various documents that I understand. The CPUC approved this project in December 2010. However, Marina was not a party to the CPU proceeding that resulted in this approval. So I wanted to make that clear. Next slide, please.
All right, we're on slide 3 of Exhibit Marina 33.
So I wanted to highlight some key differences between this regional project and the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. The regional project would have added a new water source for the Marina Coast Water District, where in contrast, this project does not provide a new water source to Marina Coast Water District and only puts their water sources at risk. The regional project did not involve constructing vertical extraction wells on the CMEX property or anywhere else within the city of Marina, as far as I understand. Next slide, please.
All right, we'll go to slide 4.
I want to be clear that the Hydrologic Working Group has never advocated on behalf of the city of Marina, and city of Marina has never had a voice of representation at all with this group. The Hydrologic Working Group, from my impression, is not impartial at all, and they are strictly advocating on behalf of CalAm. And the old adage, you just follow the money. Hydrologic Working Group is composed of 2 hydrologists representing CalAm, paid by CalAm, and there's also 2 hydrologists representing agricultural interest, who are also funded by CalAm. That's based on Tim Durbin and Peter Leffler's previous testimony. Next slide, please.
Okay, we're on slide 5.
I understand that the CPUC mitigation measure 4.43 absolutely will not have the effect that Mr. Kirks asserts it. And Marine Exhibit 27 is a letter from our attorney that explains in detail why the assertions that Mr. Kirk makes are incorrect. Next slide, please.
We're on slide 6.
Regarding the rehearing order, the order did not attempt to make any decision on water rights and recognize that the courts will ultimately make any decisions on these issues. And I'm highlighting a couple of bullets from this rehearing order. The last bullet: the commission is not the arbiter or of whether CalAm possesses water rights for the project, and nothing in the EIR/EIS should be construed as the commission's opinion regarding such rights. And next slide, please.
All right, we're on slide 7.
And halfway down that first bullet: naturally, however, if CalAm does not have the right to supply water for the proposed project, the proposed project could not proceed and would thus prove infeasible. And that concludes my rebuttal.
Okay. So, Mr. Spalding, is there anything else?
No,
For Mr. Long on direct?
no, thank you.
Okay.
Mr.
So
Wilson.
I'll just make a note. That was a total of about 21 minutes or so. So that was fine. Thank you. And I just remembered, we do have to address MCWD's exhibits, which we will do. I'm certainly not going to interrupt Mr. Long's testimony, but after we finish Mr. Long's testimony, we will probably just do City of Marina's exhibits since we're here, and then circle back to MCWD's exhibits. I know that was something we left from Tuesday. So, okay, well, thank you, Mr. Long. I'm going to go ahead and go first to Marina Coast Water District. Is there any attorney for Marina Coast Water District that wants to ask Mr. Long any questions?
Mr. Lilly, Ruth Stoner Musine, we don't have any questions for Mr. Long. Thank you.
Okay, then we will, thank you, Ms. Musine. So we will then proceed to Mr. Newdecker. And I'm not sure exactly how long this will take. I'm going to allot you half an hour. If you think, if you finish 30 minutes and still have questions and you want to make an offer of proof, then I'll consider that. Just a reminder, I hope maybe my discussion of how I plan to treat this background material may help you and frankly, other attorneys for cross-examination. I mean, Mr. Long has authenticated these documents as background material and emphasized certain parts of them, which is fine. But of course, the court ultimately will have to make legal conclusions about the issues raised by these documents. So it won't even be the State Water Board. And even if it were the State Water Board, Mr. Long is is not, as far as I know, doesn't have legal expertise and really isn't in a position to testify about legal issues. So with that admonition, Mr. Newdecker, you may proceed.
Thank you. And I will be efficient, but you've heard one side of the story. I think it's important you hear the other.
Absolutely. Please proceed.
So good morning, Mr. Long. We met very, very briefly yesterday morning at City Hall. As a reminder, my name is James Newdecker, and I represent RMC Pacific Materials, which does business as Cemex, and that's how we've been referring to them throughout these proceedings. I have some questions for you about your direct testimony. Can we please pull up Exhibit Marina 1, which should be Mr. Long's direct testimony?
It is. We will display that and then just let us know what page you would like us to scroll to.
Paragraph 20, which I believe is at PDF page 7.
Okay, yeah, the text pages are probably one off from the PDF pages. So we have this is PDF page 7, text page 6, and you say paragraph 20?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, so we're there. Go ahead.
Okay, so Mr. Long, you testify in section 7.2 of the annexation agreement / groundwater framework. RMC Lonestar agreed to the following groundwater extraction limitation. Commencing on the effective date of this agreement and framework, Lonestar shall limit the withdrawal and use of groundwater from the basin to Lonestar's historical use of 500 acre-feet of groundwater. You cite
And
Marina.
just so it's clear, it says it's 500 acre-feet per year of groundwater. You said 500 acre-feet. It's AFY, which is acre-feet per year.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Lee. And then you cite Exhibit Marina 8, Section 7.2. Then you say, since the annexation agreement / groundwater framework was executed by all parties by August 1996, this is the effective date applicable to Section 7.2. And you quote Section 2.9 of the annexation agreement, which says, subject to paragraph 4, this agreement and framework shall be fully effective when executed by all the parties. Did I read that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. Can we bring up the annexation agreement, which is, I believe, Exhibit Marina 8, and go to PDF page 1, please?
Okay, Exhibit Marina 8, page 1. And if let's Ms. Mullen just scroll down or zoom out so we can see what this is. Okay, we have
So
that up on the screen.
So, Mr. Long, is this the annexation agreement that you were referring to in paragraph 20 of your direct testimony?
Yes,
Okay. And I believe you testified just now that you became city manager in 2013. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. So you weren't around when this agreement was being negotiated or drafted and signed, and you didn't have anything to do with it, correct?
That is correct.
All you can do is read the words that are on the paper, correct?
That is correct. I can read the words.
Okay. Can we go to PDF page 2, please?
Okay,
Okay. So I want to direct your attention to the very first sentence in the very first paragraph, which says purpose groundwater planning. And the very first sentence says this agreement and framework provides for annexing lands in the Marina area to MCWRA zones 2 and 2A, the benefit assessment zones for the Nacimiento and San Antonio reservoirs. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you read that correctly.
And the Cemex property, what we've been referring to as the Cemex property, was one of those lands in the Marina area to be annexed to the MCWRA benefit assessment zones, right?
I believe that is correct.
All right, can we go to paragraph 2.9 of this annexation agreement, which I believe is on PDF page 11?
okay, we'll scroll to PDF page 11.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Long, I want to read the sentence that you quoted in your direct testimony. This is paragraph 2.9, effective date. It says, subject to paragraph 4, this agreement and framework shall be fully effective when executed by all the parties. Did I read that correctly?
You read that correctly.
Okay, so the effective date is subject to whatever paragraph 4 says, correct?
You read that paragraph correctly.
Okay, so let's go to paragraph 4, which I believe is on page 14 of the PDF.
Okay, we'll scroll down to, there's actually no paragraph 4, but there's a section 4, and we'll start with paragraph 4.1 if that's what you want.
Sure, well, I'll start broadly. So section 4 includes Lonestar's request for immediate annexation of the CMEX property, correct?
I object to the form of the question. It calls for a legal conclusion.
Yeah, Mr. Newdecker, you made this point very, very clearly in your opening brief, which I have read. And for the reasons I just said, I'm wondering how productive is it to have Mr. Long go through and read provisions of an agreement that he just testified his only knowledge of is from reading the agreement because he wasn't involved in the negotiation of it. I mean, we can all read it. All of you as lawyers can make legal arguments about that, and I can interpret that. So I wanted to give you some leeway, but can you just tell me what's the point of having Mr. Long read out loud these provisions that you can discuss in your brief and I can read as well as anybody else?
Sure. So, the point is Mr. Long has offered into evidence contrary testimony, right? I mean, Mr. Spaulding's objection was that my question calls for a legal conclusion. Mr. Long offers a legal conclusion in his direct testimony. He says this agreement was effective as of such and such a date. So, I realize I can make an argument about what words are on the paper in my brief, but I do think to the extent the city has introduced, live human testimony on this point, that I should be able to cross-examine that human on this same point.
Well, yeah, this is no offense to you, Mr. Long. You clearly are very qualified in your area of expertise, but his live human testimony on the legal interpretation of an agreement is not really entitled to any more value. It's not even entitled to the value that the legal arguments are.
Well, let me try.
I'll allow you to go questions if you want to scroll through this and ask him if certain things say what they say. I'll give you a few minutes to do that, but I hope you understand what I'm getting at. I'm not in any way diminishing your right to make these arguments. They're very important arguments, and frankly, I think you're making them very clear. I just don't know how much benefit there is to cross-examining Mr. Long about this. So anyway, go ahead for a few minutes with questions. Try to ask them in terms of asking him what things state rather than asking him to interpret things, which would call for conclusions of law.
Well, why don't I'll shift a bit here. I'll ask him more fact-based questions here.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me ask you this. Has the CEMEX property ever been annexed into MCWRA zones 2 or 2A?
I'm not positive where zones 2 and 2A are, but
wait. Sorry, I'm sorry. I couldn't. You broke up a minute. Could you please just repeat that, Mr. Long?
So I don't have the map of exactly where those zones are, so I don't have it exactly in front of me. But yes, it's my understanding that property has not been annexed into MCWD's service area.
And it's been 26 years since that agreement was signed by everyone, correct?
That agreement was effective August 1996 when people signed it, correct?
Well, I may need to go back, and I was trying to get past the effective date reading provisions, but I think that kind of illustrates my point.
You can make your arguments. I understand your arguments.
Okay, I'll ask another question. Has it always been the city's position that the annexation agreement was effective as to Lone Star or Cemex?
Are you referring back to 1996 again? I wasn't here.
Okay, well, let's refer back to a time when you were there. In 2014, was it the city's position that the annexation agreement was effective as to Cemex?
Yes, as I've stated, the annexation agreement was effective when it was signed in 1996 by all parties.
All right, so Mr. Lilly, I'm going to need to use a document for impeachment based on Mr. Long's answer. I have a PDF of that. I think if I read your last order correctly for impeachment, impeachment or rebuttal documents, are we to just email them directly to the AHO or?
Okay, yeah, I'd asked parties to upload them ahead of time, but if you haven't done that, is this something that's small enough that you can email it to us?
Yeah, it's I think 4 or 5 pages.
Okay, so, and do you have any other docs or just one that you're going to do this with?
That should be the only one.
Okay, so and can you email it right now?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do this. Why don't you email that right now to admin here? It's ADMIN and then HRG office at waterboards.ca.gov. That's you probably know the email address. And just go ahead and email that to us. We will label that as Exhibit Cemex 1. We will post it to a folder we'll have a new folder for Cemex exhibits, and we'll post it in the parties' hearing exhibits folder, which then will be accessible to all parties. And then we'll proceed. Is it easy for you to just CC everyone else? Do you have the service list? Can you CC?
Yeah, I'm going to find the most recent email that was sent to everybody, and I'll just
okay, we sent a notice of site visit on Tuesday afternoon. So if you do a reply to all, that'll probably get it to everyone. Do you see that?
I do. I got it.
Okay, just do a reply to all. Change the subject line to say Cemex, Exhibit Cemex 1. Email that to everyone. That way everyone will get it right away. And then we will post it to the hearing docs file as Exhibit Cemex 1. And then you may proceed. So it's 10:08. To do all that, we'll take a break until 10:20, and then we will proceed. So as a reminder, please don't log off, but you certainly may turn off your camera and your microphone if you don't want people to hear what you're talking about during the break. So with that, we will be back at 10:20. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have received the email from Mr. Newdecker, which with CCs went to all the parties and attached, or all the people on the service list, I should say, and attached to that was a PDF file of a 6-page document, which appears to be in a staff report or some kind of looks like a staff report to the Marina City Council for the September 3rd, 2014 meeting. We've labeled that as Exhibit SEMX1 and included that in the exhibit file, so we can certainly screen share it now if we need to. Mr. Newdecker, my staff asked a simple question. When we use SEMX, should we use all caps for CEMEX or just an initial cap? It seems to be done both ways.
It does. I think all caps is correct.
Okay, that seems to be the more common usage, so that's what we will do. So with that, would you like? Go ahead, Mr. Spalding.
Yeah, sorry to jump in here. I wondered if Mr. Newdecker had a final version of this document. I see it's unsigned by anyone. I wonder if it's a draft or if he could produce a signed version of it.
Now, Mr. Newdecker, do you have a response to that?
I'm going to ask Mr. Long about that. This is the only version I have. I'd like to ask Mr. Long about it.
Okay, so that I think that's appropriate. So would you like us to post a screen share Exhibit SEMX1?
Yes, please.
All right, let's do that and we will proceed. And Mr. Spalding, I had also noticed it's unsigned, but it looks like, or it sounds like Mr. Newdecker is going to address that issue. Go ahead.
All right. So Mr. Long, before the break, my question was, and I'm probably a word or two off here, but my question was it the city's position as of 2014 that the annexation agreement was effective as to CEMEX? And your answer was basically yes. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Have you had a chance to glance at what's on the screen now, the document that's on the screen, Exhibit SEMX 1?
I have not.
Okay. Does this look familiar to you?
No, it doesn't. Again, I have not seen this. That's document's 8 years old.
You were the city manager as of August 28th, 2014, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, Mr. Spalding asked about the lack of a signature on the last 2 pages of this PDF. Can we go to the last?
Let's go ahead and scroll down.
Yeah.
First, Ms. Mullen, to the bottom of PDF page 5. Go ahead, Mr. Newdecker.
Okay, can we actually go to page 6?
Okay.
Okay, so your name is there, right, Mr. Long?
That is my name.
Okay, have you signed similar looking staff reports as your time as city manager?
I typically sign all staff reports that go to the city council.
Okay, so you're not saying this isn't an authentic City of Marina staff report, are you? You're just saying you don't recall this particular one, is that right?
Well, this doesn't have my signature. I don't recall this staff report or anything about this.
I mean, if it had your signature, does that mean you'd remember it?
No, I would have to go back and understand. This is 8 years ago.
Okay.
First time I've seen it.
Wait. Let's slow down. I think Mr. Spalding's trying to state an objection. Mr. Long, it's a little tricky when we have to do this all by Zoom, but can you try to count to 3 silently to yourself after each one of Mr. Newdecker's questions before you start answering? That'll give Mr. Spalding a chance to say something if he wants to. Mr. Spalding, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lilly. Actually, I will. He answered. Let's move on. So
okay.
Right.
Okay,
can we go to
Mr. Long? Continue to count to 3 to yourself before you answer questions. Thank you. And this isn't just for you. I've told all the witnesses this. Go ahead, Mr. Newdecker.
Can we go to page 3 of this PDF, please? All right, and can we scroll down just a bit? All right, so Mr. Long, I want to direct your attention to the paragraph that starts annexation agreement, or is entitled annexation agreement. And there's a sentence, it's 3 sentences in, it begins on the right side, that says, the enforceability of the agreement is not certain due to the fact that, as we understand, the CEMEX property has not been annexed to MCWD. Did I read that correctly?
You read that correctly.
Okay, does this document refresh your recollection if, as of 2014, the city's own attorneys were saying that the annexation agreement's enforceability as to CEMEX was questionable?
Before Mr. Long answers, I'd like him to read the entire paragraph because he's testified he does not remember this document.
Okay, Mr. Long, why don't you just read the entire paragraph to yourself silently and let us know when you have done that. And then, Mr. Newdecker, you may ask your question. I mean, certainly it's appropriate for refreshing recollection he can offer anything he wants to see if that refreshes the witness's recollection. But I think Mr. Spaulding's request is fair. So go ahead and read the whole paragraph to yourself, Mr. Long. We will do that as well. Let us know when you have, and then Mr. Newdecker may proceed with his next question.
Okay, can I really read the whole document?
Well, let's. Okay. Can you get a copy yourself, or do you only have what we have here on the screen share?
I can look at the screen share, but I'm not an attorney, and I'm not qualified to respond. This is asking for a legal interpretation here, and I'm not qualified to respond to that.
Okay, well, he hasn't, Mr. Newdecker hasn't asked any question yet. So let's go ahead and have him ask his question. You can either say that you can either respond, or you can say you can't respond. And then if you need to, after he asks his question, we'll give you a moment to look at the entire document. So go ahead, Mr. Newdecker, ask your question.
Thank you. So Mr. Long, I'm not asking you for your own personal legal opinion. I'm simply asking you if now having read this entire paragraph, it has refreshed your recollection that in 2014, the city's own attorneys concluded that enforceability of the agreement is not certain as to CEMEX because the CEMEX property had never been annexed.
Again, I'm not a legal attorney. This is a statement by a city attorney, and I would want our legal counsel responding to that question.
So I'm not asking you.
All right. So Mr. Long, the question is just, after reading this, do you remember ever seeing this staff report?
I don't. As we've, that was 8 years ago, and I don't remember the staff report.
Okay, so Mr. Newdecker, if he doesn't remember, he doesn't remember. I'm not quite sure where you can go with this.
Okay, I'm not sure he's answered the question yet, though. Let me try it again.
Or and to try using,
Independent.
excuse me, Mr. Newdecker, refresh recollection is sort of a legal term. I think if you say, do you remember, it might be a little clearer.
Let me try it that way. Independent of this staff report, do you remember the city attorney in 2014 reporting its conclusion that the annexation agreement was not enforceable as to Cemex because the property had not been annexed? Whether you agreed with the city attorney or not, do you just remember the city attorney saying that?
No, I don't remember this whole staff report.
Independent of the staff report, do you remember the city attorney expressing that opinion?
I don't.
Okay. All right, I think we can move on from this then.
Okay.
Can we please go back to Exhibit Marina 8, which is the annexation agreement?
We will go to Marina 8. What page do you want to go to on this?
PDF page 39.
Okay.
I'm looking for paragraph 15.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay.
I think it may be here.
There we go.
Right there.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Long, paragraph 15, which is entitled Successors and Assigns, says this agreement and framework and all the terms, covenants, agreements, and conditions herein contained shall inure to the benefit of and be binding upon the successors and assigns of the parties hereto. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. This is I swear this is not a trick question. Cemex and Cal-Am, they're different companies, right?
Cemex and Cal-Am, yes, as far as I understand.
And are you aware of any document or agreement where RMC Lonestar or Cemex assigned its rights and obligations under this agreement to Cal-Am?
You're asking for some legal question there that I would have to have our attorney respond to.
Well, it's just based on, basically, are you aware of any document that stated that Cemex was assigning any of its rights or obligations to Cal-Am? Just, are you aware of any such document?
Yeah, I believe that is correct.
Wait. Tell us then, if you're aware of such document, what document are you aware of that your understanding is does that assignment?
In the settlement agreement or the option agreement, I mean, I don't have those, but those are agreements between Cemex and RMC Lonestar or Cal-Am.
And I'm sorry, so it's your testimony that one or both of those documents, Cemex said, Cal-Am, all our rights under the annexation agreement, they're yours now, and everything we have to do, you have to do now. Is that your testimony? And
Mr. Newdecker, I'm going to object to that question.
Okay.
That's you are now asking him for a legal conclusion. He's testified those are the documents he's aware of. And clearly beyond that, it's legal argument as to what they interpret. And he's been pretty darn clear that he's not an attorney and is not qualified to give those legal interpretations. So I think that question is not appropriate.
Okay, well, I'm going to move on to the last subject area then.
Okay. And
that's the 2017 sand mining settlement agreement. Can we please go back to Exhibit Marina 1, Mr. Long's direct testimony?
Okay, we will post Exhibit Marina 1.
And can we go to page 16?
All right, we have page 16. Tell us where you'd like to scroll to.
Paragraph 50. So, okay. So, and you may need to scroll a bit longer. And Mr. Long, if you need a second to read this, just let us know. But basically, paragraphs 50 to 53 in your direct testimony, that's where you're talking about the 2017 sand mining settlement agreements, right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. And what's your understanding of what the 2017 sand mining settlement agreements are?
It was an agreement for CEMEX to stop their mining on the site. It was an agreement to restore the site, and it was an agreement to make it into conservation and provide access and public education and recreation improvements.
And it's your testimony that CalAm's slant wells, if they're built on the CEMEX property, will undermine the purpose of those agreements, correct?
Those agreements do not convey or guarantee any right of CalAm to develop anything on the property.
Okay, well, let's take a look at them. Can we pull up exhibit Marina 19, please?
Okay.
And can we go, well, actually, I'll wait.
Go ahead. Tell us what page you'd like us to go to. We have exhibit Marina 19 displayed.
I think let's stay here for just a sec. Mr. Long, this document that we've pulled up, exhibit Marina 19, this is the 2017 sand mining settlement agreements you're talking about, right?
Correct, I believe.
Okay. Can we go to PDF page 16?
Okay. We will scroll to page 16.
And I'm looking for section 23.2.
All right, we'll scroll down to section 23.2. Go ahead.
Okay. And Mr. Long, this agreement, or I'm sorry, section 23.2 says, notwithstanding anything in this agreement to the contrary, this agreement is not intended to and shall not be construed or deemed to supersede or interfere with any existing rights or obligations of California American Water Company, California Corporation, CalAm, related to the property, including but not limited to the recorded easement and related option in favor of CalAm, and does not require the removal of such easement and related option. And the easement and option was to build the wells, right?
It was not.
Object to the question is vague and ambiguous and also not correct.
Okay, I think, Mr. Newdecker, you can probably, I'm going to sustain the objection. I think you can probably solve this problem by asking him what his understanding is of these documents.
Sure. So when this section says the related option in favor of CalAm, what is your understanding of what that option is?
Well, again, I'm not an attorney. If you're asking me for legal opinion, I can't give you my legal opinion.
Well, I think you just did a second ago. You said that the settlement agreements don't give CalAm any right to build this project on the CEMEX property. Those were your words. And now all I'm asking you is, what's your understanding of what the option is referred to in this paragraph?
Well, I object to the form of the question with regard to the preface characterizing his prior testimony. I don't object to the last portion of the question.
Yeah, why don't you just state that question, Mr. Newdecker? What is his understanding of what the related option is? And,
The option,
Mr. Long, you did testify about the 2014 option agreement. So I think you do have some knowledge about the option. So go ahead, Mr. Newdecker.
The option was to purchase a permanent easement for the purpose of constructing the slant wells, correct?
Yes, there's an easement for slant wells and related infrastructure, pipelines, etc.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Long. I don't have any further questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newdecker. So does any attorney for Cal-Am want to ask Mr. Long any questions?
Yes, Mr. Lilly, may I please do so?
Yes, Mr. Betts, you may proceed. I think I made a note of a time limit here. Do you have a time estimate for how long you think your questions will be?
I believe you allotted us 30 minutes and I intend to try to stick with that, but we'll see where we go.
Okay, well, that's fine. Go ahead and please proceed.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Long. Nice to see you again.
Good morning. I think you'll be a little bit different in context than yesterday.
A little bit, yes. We'll chat a little about that too. Let's go back to the beginning. If I could please have Exhibit 92 displayed.
Which part we have? Which party's 92? Cal-Am 92?
Yes, Exhibit Cal-Am 92, the cease
Okay.
and desist order.
Okay, let's get Exhibit Cal-Am 92 posted.
And as a background, Mr. Long, you're aware that in around 2009, the State Water Board ordered Cal-Am to cease and desist drawing water from the Carmel River, correct?
Correct.
Okay, you could take that down. Thank you.
Okay.
Following that order, in around December, I believe, of 2010, the CPUC approved a seawater desalinization project proposed by Cal-Am working with MCWD and the Monterey County Water Resources Agency, which was called the RDP, as you identified earlier, correct?
Correct.
The RDP was eventually terminated due to a conflict of interest by a gentleman named Steve Collins, right?
I object to the question in that it's vague and ambiguous.
Why don't you just ask Mr. Betts what his understanding is of what happened to the RDP? I think that might be the quickest way through this.
What's your understanding of what happened to the RDP?
It fell apart for a lot of different reasons.
And one of the reasons was a conflict by Steve Collins, correct?
I don't know any specifics of that.
Can we show you exhibit? Can you please display Cal-Am 116?
Okay, we will post Exhibit Cal-Am 116.
Mr. Long, have you ever seen, if you could, the phase one statement of decision that resulted after significant litigation between Cal-Am and MCWD?
Wait. Just ask him whether he's ever seen this document before. I think that's better rather than trying to characterize it.
Have you seen this phase one statement of decision before?
I'd like,
And feel free
I
to.
think, to be fair to the witness, he may want to review the document or look at it. We're only seeing the top of page one.
Sure, if that's given our environment, perhaps you could scroll through it if it can be shown and scroll through it just to try to familiarize the witness with it.
Okay, this might take some time. I'm going to try to make this go a little faster, and this is a little hard to do by Zoom. But Mr. Long, are you aware of, if you can just scroll up again, Mr. Long, that would be helpful for me. I just want to get the date of the document. Are you aware that there was litigation by California American Water Company against Marina Coast Water District and other parties in the time frame of 2015?
Yes, I'm aware that there were litigation and disputes.
Okay. Then do you have any understanding as to what decisions the court issued in that litigation?
No, I don't recall any. I don't follow that closely.
So
Okay, so go ahead, Mr. Betts. I think we now know what he knows and what he doesn't know, so maybe that'll help make this more efficient.
Sure. Well, can I follow up on that? Because I find this is a very big issue. And if Mr. Long's going to testify that he has no idea what the rulings were, so be it. I think that's very relevant, but I do want to explore a little bit more on this.
Okay, so that's fine, but just put it in terms of asking him what his understanding is or what he remembers.
Are you testifying you don't know what the result of that litigation was, sir?
No, I have not followed all the different litigation that's been going on with this.
That's not my question. My question to you specifically, are you testifying as you sit here today that you don't know what the result of the litigation was concerning the validity of the RDP agreements?
The validity of the RDP agreement. I don't recall, like this document here, I don't recall ever reading this document.
Sorry, still not my question, but
I'm sorry, the witness wasn't done.
Let's just let's try to get through this. And I know you're all doing the best you can in this environment, but Mr. Long, please just tell us what your understanding is of any of the court's decisions in this litigation.
Yeah. I honestly have not been following a lot of litigation. I know that some people say different parties have won things, different parties have not, but I really have not followed this litigation.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Betts.
Can we display CalAm 117, please?
Okay, let's post exhibit CalAm 117.
You would be kind enough to scroll down a bit. Have you ever seen exhibit 117, the amended judgment that resulted from that litigation? If you could scroll down, there's only a few short sentences there.
Okay.
Have you ever seen this?
No, I don't recall that I've ever seen this document or court decision.
Did you ever hear from the media, from staff, or anywhere that the court issued a judgment requiring Marina Coast to pay over $1 million to CalAm as a result of that litigation on the RDP?
As I said previously, I'm aware of a lot of different court things going on, but I'm not positive of the rulings on one way or the other. I have not been following that.
I'm sorry, once again, not my question. My question, sir, is are you aware, did you ever hear, this is very specific, that Marina Coast was ordered to pay over $1 million to CalAm as a result of the litigation concerning the RDP as city manager during this time?
As I said, I'm not aware of this document where you're pointing to is of that award.
Wait, Mr. Long, he's not asking about this document anymore. He's asking you, are you aware that the court required Marina Coast Water District to pay CalAm over $1 million in this litigation?
No, I'm not.
As the city manager, you never heard that?
I'm not following that litigation.
All right. You could take that down. Thank you. Well, let me try this. As the city manager, going back to 2014, you at least were aware of the RDP. Is that correct?
I've heard of the regional project. Yes.
Sir, it's all over your testimony. You submitted testimony.
Yeah,
background slide.
Mr. Betts, if you want to ask him a specific question about the RDP, I instead of arguing, I think it's more efficient to just let's post the part of the testimony you want to ask him about, and then you can ask him specific questions.
Sure, Mr. Lee, but it was just a general question, and it sounds like he was equivocating of whether he knew of the RDP when it's, I would point to 50 probably places. So I'm a little confused as whether he knows about it or not. It seems a bit concerning if he doesn't. So
He said he did. So go ahead.
You are aware that the city of Marina supported the RDP, correct?
You know, that was before I was here. I believe they did, but I'm trying to recall any official documents from the city. But I do believe that we were supportive of that regional project.
And in fact, the city consented to a consolidated coastal development permit process for the RDP as a whole, correct?
Yeah. I was made aware of a document last night that I've seen for the first time, and I'm not familiar with the context of that, what triggered that document, what the background was. And so I would need to talk to their attorneys and get some context to understand that.
Well, sir, when you were giving testimony, sworn testimony, in your direct testimony, your rebuttal about the differences between the RDP and the current project, you did something to familiarize yourself with that, correct?
I just testified that document was the first time I'd seen that last night.
Okay, that's not my question, again, is that you gave testimony, extensive testimony about the perceived differences between the RDP and the current project, correct?
Correct.
Okay, can you show exhibit CalAm 115?
Okay, we will post exhibit CalAm 115.
If you could scroll down to a little bit, please. If we go to the last paragraph, please. And you could stop there, thank you. You see is this the document you're referring to?
Yes.
Do you know who Anthony Alfred is?
He was a previous city manager for Marina.
And you took over his position?
No.
Do you see the last sentence that says the conditions of resolution number 2011-31 are therefore satisfied in the city of Marina consents to a consolidated coastal development permit for the project as a whole. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
And you understand that was referring to what I would call the RDP? Feel free to look at the first paragraph. We could scroll up.
Yeah, can you scroll up? Correct, that's what it says.
So you've testified based on your review of documents. You have some thoughts about the RDP versus the current project. Do you have any reason to deny that the city of Marina consented to a consolidated coastal development permit for the RDP as a whole?
So what I said is, it's the first time I'm aware of this. I'm not aware of this resolution. I'm not aware of yet the background, what triggered this, what exactly it was referring to, what they're talking about. I would need to get further information on that.
All right, at this point, I move to strike the answer and ask that he answer my questions.
I'm not following. I think he's trying to answer your question, so I'm going to deny a motion to strike. Why don't you go ahead? I think Mr. Betts, Mr. Long is doing the best he can, considering that this document was before he was city manager at City of Marina. I mean, we can all read it. He can read it. So I'm not quite sure what the purpose of your questioning is for him about this document.
Sure. Two, I take issue with doing the best you can, but the simple question was, does he have any reason to deny that statement was correct?
Okay, I think that's a yes or no answer, Mr. Lane. Let me just state it maybe a less argumentative way. Do you have any do you have any questions about, to the best of your knowledge, is the last sentence of this letter accurate?
Yeah, the best of my knowledge, this was signed by Tony Altfeld. I am not aware of that resolution. But the letter says what it does. Yeah, so I don't dispute that that's what the letter says. I have no idea the resolution or any of the background or any of the history of this at all. I would just need to get more information to understand the whole context of this, what the letter's talking about.
All right, I don't think that answered it, but we could take it down.
Okay, let's go ahead and move.
I move that the statement just made by Mr. Betts be struck. I think he's badgering the witness.
Again,
No, wait. I deny that request. To some extent, this is getting into argument, but let's just move on, and we'll see where we go. I don't think we need to make any rulings on what's already been covered. I think we've covered it well enough. Go ahead, Mr. Betts.
Sure. Let me ask you this. Did the city of Marina raise any water issues regarding the RDP?
Are you referring back to 2010?
Through today?
And so restate your question again, please.
And again, Mr. Betts, it's going to help a lot if you ask him what is his understanding. So why don't you ask the question that way?
What is your understanding of whether the city of Marina raised any water rights whatsoever regarding the RDP?
Raised, what do you mean by raised any water rights?
Objected to it, seawater intrusion.
Wait. I think you meant water right issues, which is why I was confusing. So state the question again, not compound, just state a direct question. Try again.
Are you aware of the city of Marina raising any water right issues with the RDP?
And so I'm not familiar with those details of the RDP. I'm sorry, that was just before my time.
Are you aware of the city of Marina raising any seawater intrusion issues related to the RDP?
Again, that was before my time. I don't know any specifics from back then.
Now, sir, the reason I ask is you testified and you on direct about distinctions between the RDP and the MPWSP, correct?
Correct.
So I'm confused. If you don't know specifics about the RDP, how are you able to formulate your testimony?
Well,
Go ahead.
I think what I testified before was I was aware that Marina Coastal Water District would be getting a new water source. Those specifics you're asking about, I don't know.
You made a distinction between the RDP and the MPWSP, saying one was a regional project and one wasn't. Do you recall that?
That's correct.
Is it your testimony the city will support a regional water supply project near the CEMEX site only if it provides water to the city of Marina, but not if it only provides water to Calam and Castroville customers?
I object to the question in that it calls for speculation about what the city might do in the future and is improper.
Yeah, Mr. Betts, I think I have to sustain that. You're asking him to speculate about what a future city council decision might be. So I don't think that's an appropriate question.
Sure, I don't think I asked anything about the future, to be very specific. I was saying today, as we sit here today in this proceeding that emanated from a lawsuit by the city of Marina, the city is objecting to the current project. With that background, and Mr. Long has said one was a regional project, one wasn't. And my question is the city objecting today to the current project simply because it's going to provide water only to Calam and Castroville customers and not the city of Marina?
Okay, that's a reasonable question. If you may answer that, Mr. Long, go ahead.
You restate that again, please.
Sure. You understand the city of Marina has sued CalAmp regarding the Monterey project, correct?
Correct.
It doesn't want that project to go forward, correct?
Correct.
And when you testified earlier about the difference between the RDP and the current project, one of your distinctions was the RDP was a regional project that in part provides water to the city of Marina, whereas the current project doesn't. Do you recall that?
Correct.
So my question to you, is this lawsuit all about the fact that the city will support a regional project if it provides water to the city of Marina, but it will not support a water supply project near the CMEX site if water only goes to CalAmp and Castroville customers?
That's not correct.
How's it any different? It's the same site, same area. The only distinction is City of Marina is not getting water currently.
That's not correct.
By the way, Castroville has citizens that meet some of the demographics you talked about earlier, people of color, sociological issues. They have citizens, great citizens like that as well, right?
They do.
So does CalAmp customers, correct?
Yes, they do.
And if the project goes forward, by providing water to Castroville will do less pumping in the basin, correct?
I don't know the details of what Castroville is doing, pumping and not pumping. I don't know those details.
You talked about some environmental issues. You understand that the current project will use slant wells, correct?
It is proposed to use slant wells, correct?
Which are more environmentally friendly than the vertical wells proposed by the RDP, correct?
Objection. Seems fact not in evidence, lacks foundation.
I think, Mr. Betts, you can avoid. First of all, I'll sustain the objection. I think if you just ask him, will the slant well project be environmentally superior to the RDP vertical well project, you can ask that question. Now, pretty soon, we're going to get into the area that was the subject of CalAmp's motion in limine, the part that I granted. But I'll allow you to ask him at least that one question. So go ahead.
So can you restate that again, please?
Sure. You understand the current project's proposed slant wells are more environmentally friendly than the RDP vertical wells that the city of Marina supported.
So I don't know. I don't know the details of the RDP's vertical wells, but I do know it's our understanding those slant wells are not environmentally friendly for a whole set of reasons that we've stated.
Do you know that personally?
That is our strong belief. We've had independent experts look at that, and they've given their opinions. I've looked at MCWD's, talked with their experts, and that is our belief. There are severe environmental impacts with that project.
And what about the RDP vertical wells that the city supported? Do those have any environmental impacts?
Again, I don't know the details of that project. I don't know where those vertical wells are being proposed. I don't know the details of that project.
Well, sir, yesterday, less than 24 hours ago, you were standing at the CMEX site with me, and you saw that the RDP project was in pretty close vicinity where Mr. Crooks was pointing out, correct?
No, I don't know where that RDP project is. I've never seen a document where those vertical wells are. I don't know.
So you're testifying under penalty of perjury, you don't know anywhere where that RDP project was going to be located?
I have not seen a document that says where those vertical wells are.
That's not my question, sir. Please listen to my questions. I'm not asking if you've seen a document. Do you have any reason to believe that the RDP project wasn't close to the CMEX site as was pointed out yesterday?
I said, I don't know where they were going to be. I don't know.
Was it your understanding the RDP project was going to be within the city of Marina?
No.
You don't know that?
It's my understanding. I don't know the details of that RDP project. That was before my time. you're asking a lot of details that I just don't know. I have not seen documents. I've not seen, I don't know where those vertical wells were going to go. It's my understanding they were not going to be in the city of Marina or the CMEX site.
That's your understanding that the RDP project was not going to be in the city of Marina. Is that your testimony?
That misstates his testimony. He talked about the wells, not about the project.
Yeah, I think you go ask about the wells. That was your question before.
Okay. Is your understanding the wells for the RDP project were going to be located within the city of Marina?
Yeah, and I'm saying I don't know where those wells are going to be. My understanding that they were not going to be at the CMEX site or the city of Marina.
Or the city of Marina?
Correct.
That's your testimony, right?
That's my understanding. Again, that was before my time here.
Sir, I understand. I wouldn't be asking you this. Just on direct testimony, you talked about the difference between the two projects. I'm allowed to follow up.
Correct. And I was answering honestly and truthfully your question.
Are you aware that the Marina Coast Water District is trying to revive its desalinization plant located just south of the CMEX site?
By their previous headquarters, yes, they do have a desalination plant. I believe I've heard discussions that at some point they may try to get that functioning again.
Okay, and that's how far away from the CMEX site?
That's probably half mile to a mile.
And it's pretty much on the beach, right? Pretty close to the beach coast, right?
That's correct.
And you understand that currently that the MCWD is in the process of trying to revive that desalinization plant?
Yes, I've heard discussions about that.
Okay, will that desalinization plant cause seawater intrusion and all the devastation you testified about on direct?
I don't know any details of that plant. I don't know where the intake is coming from that plant. If it's coming directly from the ocean, I don't know the details of it.
Well, have you heard anyone from the city of Marina, MCWD, anyone claim that that desalinization plant will cause any injury or harm to MCWD's wells?
I don't know the details of that plant.
You may not, but have you heard? My question is, have you heard from anyone on this planet that that desalinization plant will cause any of the harms or any harm whatsoever to MCWD's wells?
You're asking, say that again. I want to be sure I answer it correctly.
Have you heard from any source whatsoever that MCWD's desalinization plant, a half a mile or mile away, the proposed project will cause any injury or harm to MCWD's wells?
I'm trying to remember if I have heard anything regarding that plant and their wells, and I'm just not positive.
You testified about a few documents. Can we take a look at CalAm 93?
Okay, we will post CalAm 93.
Sir, you're aware that in 2013-ish, the State Water Board issued a lengthy order concerning the current project, the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project?
And Mr. Betts, I want you and all the other attorneys to know that I consider it to be very important that this 2013 document was a report prepared by State Water Board staff that never went to the board. So I mean, I know different parties and different entities have referred to this as different things, but the most accurate description, and the one I intend to use in my proposed report, is to refer to this as the 2013 State Water Board staff report. But the one thing it is definitely not is an order or decision. So if you can characterize it that way, Mr. Betts, and all other attorneys, I would appreciate it, because that's what it is.
No problem, Mr. Lilly. I think that's accurate and it's important. I think the board has incredible staff that spent a lot of time coming up with this document, and there's some key provisions in here I'd like to ask the witness about as it relates to his testimony.
Okay, well, first of all, Mr. Long, are you familiar or have you seen this 2013 State Water Board staff report regarding the Monterey the proposed Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project?
I don't believe I've seen this document before. I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. I still have a few questions about some of the statements by staff. If we could take a look at, I think it's PDF 39, page 33.
Okay, we'll go to PDF page 39. And is that where you want us to be?
Yeah, you could, the second paragraph under 6.
Okay, section 6, second paragraph.
So a quick question. The sentence reads, the second sentence, CalAm needs no groundwater right or other water right to extract seawater from Monterey Bay. Do you see that?
I see that.
And you testified on direct about certain groundwater issues. My question to you is, under penalty of perjury, based on your personal knowledge, do you know of any reason to say that staff got that sentence wrong?
I object to the question. This section, this paragraph is in, has to do with a legal summary by State Water Board staff. This witness has said he's never seen the document before, and to ask him whether he agrees with a legal conclusion in a report he's never seen is unfair to the witness, and it's beyond his expertise and inappropriate.
So my brief response, Mr. Lilly, is we had to listen to and read the direct testimony. I have slides where Mr. Long is giving legal conclusions, not only about the annexation agreement that my colleague dealt with, but provides, for example, he says the project threatens the integrity of Marina's groundwater supply and the Salinas Valley groundwater basin. And he goes on to make a number of other legal conclusions. He talked about what the staff, by the way, staff from the Coastal Commission found. I think they put up slides highlighting certain provisions. And so he's allowed to highlight, cherry pick staff opinions from the Coastal Commission. I think it's fair for me to ask him a couple of questions about staff from the State Water Board, which dealt with these exact issues or many of these issues.
If I could briefly respond, he quoted a few provisions from the CPUC report and other documents. He did not provide any legal conclusions about them.
Well, the record is what it is. And first of all, with staff, we should be very clear.
Oh, okay. So, Mr. Betts, if you want to talk about portions of Mr. Long's testimony, we need to get that up on the screen. As far as this question, I'll just ask it. I mean, I think Mr. Long has made it very clear he's not a lawyer and doesn't really have qualifications to testify about legal issues. But let me just ask, Mr. Long, this sentence reads, CalAm needs no groundwater right or other water right to extract seawater from Monterey Bay. Do you see that?
I see that, yes.
Do you have any opinion regarding whether this statement is correct or incorrect?
I really don't know that I really don't know. There's legal things I don't understand. I don't know if it's referring to extracting directly from the ocean in Monterey Bay versus groundwater. I just don't understand.
Okay, I think, Mr. Betts, first of all, you said a few minutes ago, Mr. Long testified about concerns about the integrity, I believe, of Marina Coast Water District's water supply. That's quite a bit different from testifying about legal issues. I mean, integrity is a factual issue. So I'm going to, and beyond that, this really is just not a very productive line of questioning. I mean, the attorneys are going to make legal arguments on these legal issues, I am sure. And we are going to review this State Water Board staff report and its analysis, and then decide, what we agree with and what we don't agree with. But drawing Mr. Long through this, it's just not productive. If there's specific comments he made in his slides or his direct testimony that you want to ask him about, I think it's most productive to get those up on the screen and you can ask him about those. But again, the main thing he did was he highlighted some excerpts from documents. I don't know that was the most effective way to present that. I think City of Marina could have just as well made those arguments in briefs, but they had him present those. If you want to ask him questions about those excerpts, that's fine. But this is really all just background material and then legal issues that this witness is not really qualified to talk about. So
Thank you, Mr.
I'm not seeing a lot of productivity in this line of questioning.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Lilly. I appreciate that guidance. And I'll be perfectly clear. I have 20 more of those from this, as well as critically the CPU decision and the rehearing decision. And the reason why, and I won't go there, but I think it's important to make a record, is that, first of all, there are scores of people that worked on this, whether it be the State Water Board or CPUC, and we're in a public hearing today. And for this all to be challenged all over again, I think it's fair for the public to understand why the City of Marina is now challenging things that have been ruled on, and there's a Supreme Court petition that was denied. Bringing this more to the ground, I'm looking at, and I will do exactly what you said, go to provisions that he cited from the CPUC order, but also remember he quoted from the staff Coastal Commission and made statements that the Coastal Commission felt that this was the most environmentally challenged, or I forgot his exact words, project. So he's reading statements and giving you testimony of what the Coastal Commission felt when it was A, from staff, B, not what they said in interpretation. So I think if it's fair for him to select certain things, through council's guidance to make an argument, that we get to do the same thing. And in that regard, I did and do have 20 of those. But I want to make my record why we're doing this. I think it's really important for the public and for the board here to hear what was ruled on that tie exactly to the issues here. So with that.
Okay, well then let's I understand where you're coming from, and basically, as I hear it, you're saying it's not really fair for Mr. Long to be able to pull excerpts from certain documents and highlight them in his testimony, and if he's going to do that, Cal-Am ought to be able to respond. And to save us, and I understand that, and I think there is some legitimacy to that argument. But to save us some time, let me just throw out this. I think a much more efficient way, rather than dragging him through all these documents, most of which he's testified he hasn't seen before, is if you want, and you want to make an offer of proof, I think that you can have a Cal-Am witness make similar testimony. I mean, frankly, I think you can do this all through briefs, but if you think there's some value to having a Cal-Am witness highlight other provisions from documents and make a similar testimony, presentation to what Mr. Long did, I guess in fairness, since I let him do it, I should let a Cal-Am witness do that. But that would be way more efficient than going through this on cross-ex.
So unless
All right, go ahead, Mr. Spalding, raise your hand, and then we'll come to you, Mr. Betts.
Sure.
Yeah, in fact, Mr. Lilly, they did exactly that. In his opening testimony, Ian Crooks quoted several sections from both the initial PUC order and the rehearing order, and we are responding by citing other provisions within the same document. So this is not something that Cal-Am has not done or not had the opportunity to do.
Okay, so Mr. Betts, go ahead. I think we're going to need to wrap this up.
Sure, I would like to take you up on your opportunity, because I think, as I said, for the public at large, the people that have put the work into this, the CPUC that ruled on these things and came up with findings on identical issues, I think it's really important to do. So I do respectfully take you up on your opportunity at some point to do that. But for now, I will focus on what they put at issue in the slides.
Okay, yeah, and focus on what Mr. Lane knows about, Mr. Long knows about, rather than thinks
Well-
he doesn't. And I understand you have to ask foundational questions
Yeah.
to find out whether or not he knows, but
Well,
let's go ahead and do it that way. And then if you want to make an offer of proof regarding having some other Calum witness, again, I don't think it's necessary. You can cite to all the documents. They're all in the record, or then they will have been or probably will be admitted into evidence. So yeah, you can just as well have an attorney document that highlights them. It says, see, these are the provisions we think are important for you to read. So
Okay.
anyway, let's move on.
Sure.
Let's, if you can focus on Mr. Long's testimony, I think that will be most efficient.
Let's take a look at, I don't know what exhibit was. It was the rebuttal testimony, I think, on page 6.
Okay, so we have exhibit Marina 25 is Mr. Long's rebuttal testimony. And we will go to exhibit Marina 25, we will go to page 6.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to go to this. This is fine. First of all, did you read the entirety of the rehearing order?
A while back, I believe I did.
Okay, and then you
I
presumably
don't
also
recall-
read.
Wait. Let him finish his answer.
I don't recall all the specifics of it.
I just asked if you read it.
Did you read the CPUC rehearing order dated February 5, 2019, Mr. Long?
I believe I did. I'm trying to recall if I read all the complete hearing, but I believe I did.
Okay, did you read the prior order that it was referring to?
The prior order, and what are you referring to in the prior order?
Well, this is a CPUC rehearing order. Did you read the order that it was addressing?
And when was that?
Okay, so this order, Mr. Long, was dated February 5, 2019. It was on a petition for rehearing. I think the very first line, if you can just scroll up, Ms. Mullen, refers to a CPUC decision. So do you know, well, I guess the first question is, do you know what that CPUC decision is that you're referring to in your testimony?
Yeah, our city attorney filed a letter in response to that, and he's handling all the details of that. So I'm relying on our city attorney for that. And that was his letter.
Okay, so I do see, Mr. Betts, on the previous page in paragraph 13, Mr. Long's testimony refers to the CPUC decision. So if you want to ask him questions about that decision, I think that might be a starting point to go to his testimony where he refers to that decision.
Sure, I'd love to ask him about 20, but my very basic question is, did you read the PUC decision? I think it was September 20, 2018.
Okay, so let's scroll up here to Ms. Mullins. Please scroll up to paragraph 13. Okay, so Mr. Long, this paragraph refers to CPUC decision number 18-09-017, which you call decision. Did you
Correct.
read that decision?
I have looked at that decision. I don't recall all the details of it.
Did you read it, sir?
I believe I have.
Okay. Now, if we can get back to your rebuttal testimony, I could use his slides. I thought slide 6 in the rebuttal.
Okay, let's post exhibit Marina 33 and go to slide 6.
You see this slide, sir?
Yes.
And your testimony here is that the CPUC rehearing order did not attempt to make any decision on water rights and recognize that the courts will ultimately make any decisions on these issues. Do you see that?
That correct. I do see that.
And that's your testimony, correct?
Correct.
And you do understand, of course, that the groundwater issues that you're referring to between MCWD, the city, and CalAmp, they existed when the rehearing order was issued. They just weren't resolved, correct?
Restate that again, please.
Sure. You understood that the water right issues you're referring to here, the issues between the parties here, existed in 2019, but the CPUC rehearing order just didn't resolve those issues, right?
Yes, that I think that's my understanding.
Okay. And those issues, in fact, they existed before 2019, right?
I object, vague and ambiguous. What issues?
The issues that
I think he said the water right issues that are discussed here. So I'm going to overrule that objection. I think the question is clear.
So you restate your question again, please.
those issues existed before this rehearing order that you've testified about, correct? They just weren't resolved in the rehearing order.
And so can you be more specific on those issues?
The issues that you're referring to, you just testified about an hour ago.
Wait. So I think you can just ask him, are you familiar, are you aware that the pending water right issues associated with this proposed CalAmp project existed before 2019?
Can you say that again, Mr. Lee?
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I could try.
Go ahead, Mr. Betts, back to you. I didn't seem to do much better than you did. Go ahead.
Well, I quite frankly think we both did a good job, but you testified.
Just go ahead.
You testified. You have a slide here that's saying that the CPUC rehearing issue did not attempt to make any decision on water rights.
That's correct. That's my understanding.
Those issues regarding the water rights that you're referring to here, you understood existed as of the time of this order. They just weren't resolved by the order, correct?
That's not correct. I'm not saying that these water rights, that they were there.
Well, then what wasn't decided?
I think my understanding is you were saying that the CPUC was making a decision on water rights, that the project had water rights. And we're saying, no, that's not what the CPUC, they were not making a decision on the water rights.
Okay, but those water rights issues existed as of the time of the order, correct? There was just no decision on them.
Well, if you're implying that they had water rights to it,
I'm not implying that anybody was right or wrong about the water rights. The dispute about those water rights existed. How about that?
Of course.
Yeah, we have said, yes, that there are not water rights there. So,
and
I think that what you're saying is correct.
And you've maintained, or the city's maintained that position since whenever the project was first proposed, right?
Correct. We don't believe that there are water rights.
And the city's maintained that position long before this CPUC order, correct?
I believe that is correct.
Well, just to be clear, since the project was first proposed, the city has maintained that CalAmp has no water rights, correct?
For this project, correct.
You talked briefly, just in conclusion, about the cost of water and the affordability of water for the Marina customers, correct?
Correct.
And I showed you earlier an order where Marina was ordered, or MCWD was ordered to pay CalAmp $1 million some odd. You recall seeing that order? I understand that may have been the first time.
Right. I recall, yes, the document they shared with me.
And you're aware that MCWD has been suing CalAmp for the better part of a decade over these various projects, correct?
I'm aware there has been a lot of litigation, various parties.
Okay, and MCWD,
including MCWD.
got it. Well, various parties, I'm sorry. are you aware of any party other than MCWD and the city of Marina filing a lawsuit in the Superior Court against Cal-Am regarding the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project?
I don't know. I can't answer that.
Okay, well, the legal costs that MCWD is paying, its attorneys, and had to pay Cal-Am, those costs get passed on to the water users, correct?
I'm assuming that would be correct.
And that's increasing those innocent water users' cost for water, correct?
Yeah, all those costs to operate the water system get folded into the rates.
I'm gonna object to the question. It's argumentative. Innocent water users. I think this is an argumentative line of questioning.
It was my
Okay,
last.
I'm going to overrule the objection. Innocent clearly was not an appropriate word to use in that question, but Mr. Long testified that his understanding is those costs get passed on to the ratepayers, and he didn't pass judgment on whether they're innocent or not. So let's move on.
I have nothing further. I appreciate your time, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Betts. So I think we've now completed all the cross-examination by the attorneys. So I do have some questions for Mr. Long, if we can go through those. So Ms. Mullen, please display exhibit Marina 32, Mr. Long's slides. And go to slide 7. Mr. Long, the first bullet here states, and this is your summary slide, states, based on the MCWD Water Master Plan and other sources, Marina's water supply is currently provided by 7 active MCWD groundwater production wells in the basin, known as well numbers 29, 30, 31, 34, 35, 10, and 11. Do you see that?
Yes.
During the site visit yesterday, we also visited MCWD well number 12. Is your understanding that MCWD number 12 is currently in operation?
Yeah, actually that site visit answered some questions I had about 12, because I wasn't sure of the exact status of 12. My testimony was based on the water master plan that says that they have these 7 active wells. I know well number 12 exists, and in my understanding from the site visit was that well is under repair right now, and that was going to be up and operational again.
Okay. Well, I may follow up with Mr. Schwartzinger about that. Obviously, he would know more about that than you would. So that's fine.
Yeah, I believe in his testimony, he talked about there being 8 active wells. And so I just not sure of active well versus one well that's being repaired.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, if we can go forward, I'm going to get the number to slide 14, please. Okay, Mr. Long, the last bullet point here at the bottom of this slide states, Cal-Am filed an appeal with the CA Coastal Commission, which remains pending. Do you see that?
Yes.
And what is your understanding of the current status of that appeal?
I believe that appeal is going to be heard on November 17th by the Coastal Commission. I believe the staff report will be coming out tomorrow regarding that hearing on the 17th.
Okay, and I don't know if you know, I certainly don't know. Do you know if the Coastal Commission has indicated whether it will be issuing a decision on or in the near future after November 17th?
We're kind of waiting for the staff report tomorrow to see what it says.
Okay, and I'll just advise the attorneys that certainly Again, this is background, but if we're going to provide background information, we want it to be as up to date as possible. So I certainly request that if there's any coastal commission action, that some attorney advised me, particularly if there's a written decision, we'd obviously like to add that to our record. So no, attorneys don't need to respond now, but I would like to know about that when the coastal commission acts. So I'll just leave it at that for now. We'll go on to slide 15. Mr. Long, the first bullet point here says sand mining operation on the Cemex property has been ongoing since approximately early 1900s. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then the very last bullet refers to Exhibit Marina 19 and states that a settlement was reached in June 2017 to end Cemex's sand mining by December 31, 2020, and to restore the site and to sell it at a reduced price to a nonprofit organization or government agency. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, well, when we were on the Cemex property yesterday, I mean, I couldn't tell what was going on. There were a lot of trucks going around, and the Cemex personnel told us to make sure to stay out of the way. But do you have an understanding as to whether sand mining is in fact still ongoing at the Cemex property?
Yes, my understanding is sand mining is not ongoing. What they had to cease by December 31st, 2020 was the actual extraction of the sand from the ocean. So their dredge ponds and all those operations ceased on December 31st, 2020. And I believe they have 3 years to complete the restoration of the site. And so what is ongoing right now is within that 3-year period to sell or complete the restoration of the site. So I think there'll be a lot of busy activities for the next year and a half, probably.
Okay. And something else I was wondering about, do you know if there are substantial amounts of sand left on the property that could have been, that Cemex could have continued to mine if it hadn't agreed to stop the mining by December 31st of 2020?
Yes, I think they would have continued to mine indefinitely. Their mine, they had a dredge pond, so it was taking water from the coast. And so that would have continued indefinitely.
Okay, let's go to Exhibit Marina 33. This is your rebuttal slides, Mr. Long. And go to slide 3. Okay, thank you. So the second bullet here says the regional project did not involve constructing, operating extraction wells on the Cemex property or anywhere else within the city of Marina. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and this is probably a repeat of some of Mr. Betts's questions, but I just want to make sure I understand. Do you know where the regional project wells would have been?
No, I don't know exactly where they would have been. It was just my understanding that they weren't going to be on the Cemex property or anywhere else in Marina, but I don't know exactly where they're going to be. Sorry.
No, that's fine. If you don't know, you don't know. I can't ask you to speculate. Okay, let's go forward to Exhibit Marina 1. Sorry, I'm shuffling through my notes here. Please just give me a moment. Okay, and we'll go to page 6 in paragraph 20. the PDFs may be one off. I'm on text page 6. So there we go. Thank you. So Mr. Long, paragraph 20 states, in section 7.2 of the annexation agreement / groundwater framework, RMC Lonestar agreed to the following groundwater extraction limitation. Quote, commencing on the effective date of this agreement and framework, Lonestar shall limit the withdrawal and use of groundwater from the basin to Lonestar's historical use of 500 AFY of groundwater. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, I'm going to ask you if you know about the details of that historical use. First of all, do you know how, or I'll just say, from what sources did Lone Star obtain groundwater for its historical uses?
So Marina Coast Water District, this is my understanding, they would be the water purveyor. And so any water, I believe, would have to come from Marina Coast Water District. And I'm not positive if I don't think they have wells on the site. We use porta potties on the site visit, so I'm assuming they don't have wells or water on the site.
Okay. So do you have any other information regarding any of the details of the historical use of what says here 500 AFY of groundwater?
I can't refer to specific documents, but in talking with people, and I can't remember exactly who, but it was my understanding was the reason they wanted that 500 acre feet was for potential development of homes. But I can't remember who I was talking with, but that's my understanding is there are some other reasons why they wanted that 500 acre feet.
Okay, but I guess my question is, do you have any, well, let's just start with numbers. Do you have any information regarding how many acre feet per year of groundwater Lone Star historically used?
I don't have any information. I don't believe they've used anything as far as I know, but I'm not positive.
Okay. All right. I'll tell the attorneys, and again, please make a note of this. I do think it's potentially relevant to one or more of the court's hearing issues, and I'm a little concerned. Mr. Neudecker has said he's not planning to call any CEMEX witnesses, but one way or another, I'd sure like to find out some of the details of Lone Star's historical use of groundwater in terms of where it came from, what it was used for, TDS, and amounts. So we will revisit that, but I'm not going to ask Mr. Long any further questions about it because it seems pretty clear he doesn't know anything more about that. So let me move on. Check my notes here. And following up on one of Mr. Betts's questions, Mr. Long, and also on this question came up during the site visit yesterday. There has been some discussion about a potential Marina Coast Water District desal project. Do you recall that discussion?
Yes.
Do you know whether that project would involve extraction wells or a diversion of seawater directly from the ocean?
I'm not positive, but I believe their intakes are from the ocean, but I'm not positive where their extraction or intake wells are.
Okay, so Mr. Schwartzinger, I don't know if you're listening, but I'm going to ask if you can come back to, obviously in a better position to provide information about that.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lilly, Mr. Schertzinger is here. This is Ruth Stoner Museum from Marina Coast, and
Yeah.
he's happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Well, tell him not to go away, and I know he won't. I assume he won't. Wait, I'd want to finish up for Ruth Brown, but I may have a couple based on that and potentially the some from the site visit. I'm just checking my notes here. Okay, so those are the only questions I have for you, Mr. Long. So thank you very much. And also, I didn't thank you yesterday for the city's hospitality and getting us out of the rain to start the site visit, but that was nice. We had a dry spot to start the site visit. And certainly I also appreciate the mayor coming along, taking time out of his schedule to come along on the site visit. So please pass my thanks on to him as well. And with that, is there any redirect questioning of Mr. Long? Mr. Spalding?
Yes, I have one very quick line of questioning.
Okay, that's what attorneys always say, Mr. Spalding. But
You're not going to let me.
I'm trying to put a little humor into this process.
Yeah.
Go ahead with
last
your
words,
redirect.
yeah. All right, Mr. Long, you were asked by Cemex's attorney about the CN Mining Settlement Agreement, which has been marked as Exhibit Marina 19. And I'd like to ask that exhibit be pulled up on the screen.
Okay, we'll post exhibit or screen share exhibit Marina 19.
Now, you were asked about Cal-Am's rights of record under the agreement. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you stated that the agreement did not provide any rights to Cal-Am to develop on the Cemex property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, I'd like to turn to paragraph 2.1 of this document. I'm not sure of the page. I think it's page 2 or 3.
Okay, we'll scroll up to page 2 and see where we are. I will scroll down a little bit here. Okay, it looks like it starts on this page and goes to the next page. So go ahead. What's your question?
All right, thank you. Looking at, let's see, beginning on the third sentence, with the third sentence, it says, quote, nothing in, and then.
Okay, we'll scroll down. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So it says, quote, nothing in this agreement guarantees or conveys any right to development on the site other than the work and activities expressly authorized by this agreement. Do you see that paragraph? See that
Yes.
sentence? And is that what you based your statement on, that there was no development right authorized under the agreement?
Yes, that's correct. That's the section I was referring to.
And is it your well, tell me if you have an understanding as to whether the agreement required Cal-Am to obtain coastal development permits.
Okay, and Mr. Spalding, you have now pushed me over the limit. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You objected when other attorneys asked Mr. Long to state legal conclusions, and he basically stated several times correctly, he's not a lawyer and basically doesn't have a lot of understanding of these detailed legal issues. I mean, he's obviously very experienced and qualified in what he does, but it's not that. So I am not going to now allow you to ask him legal questions about this agreement. That just is not fair. So please move on.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we are now ready to get to exhibits. I will start with the City of Marina exhibit, since we have City of Marina's, we've had the testimony, we have those exhibits. Mr. Spalding, are you prepared to tell us what Marina exhibits you want to offer into evidence now, or would you rather have us take our lunch break and you can do that over lunch and send us an email telling us what you want to offer?
Actually, we are ready. Ms. Weisenheimer is ready.
Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to get the exhibit list here. And I didn't pull up right away my order on the CalAm motion in limine, although I'm sure Ms. Meisenheimer will not offer any exhibits that were excluded by the order on the motion in limine. But Mr. Meisenheimer, which Marina exhibits does Marina want to offer into evidence at this point?
Thank you. And as we have sort of the split hearing, we're just moving the exhibits in that I think we've dealt with in this proceeding.
Of course.
So it's Marina 1,
Okay.
8 through 11, 19, 24 through 27, 32 through 33.
I'm sorry, I have to go to the next page here.
Sure.
I got 24 through 27. What comes next?
32 and 33.
Okay.
And then I believe 34 through 38 have already been admitted, but to the extent they haven't, we would move those in at this point.
Okay, let me just get my list of those. Okay, what are 34 through 38? Were those deposition transcript excerpts?
No, but those were all documents that were admitted during this proceeding on cross-examination. You know, it's a section of the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. I apologize. Actually, 3 of them are deposition exhibits and 2 of them are deposition excerpts that were remarked.
Okay, I don't know. Mr. Anderson, have you been keeping track? Do we have a record that those have already been admitted? I'm putting you on the spot. Go ahead.
I do not.
Okay, we will have to check. I think you're right. I think they were already admitted. So, so I'm going to just repeat. City of Marina is offering Marina exhibits 1, 8 through 11, 19, 24 through 27, and 32 and 33. Is that correct, Ms. Meisenheimer?
That is correct. And that should not include anything that was excluded. But if, of course, if anything is, we will not move it in. But I've got a record here and I'm pretty sure that does not include anything that was struck.
Okay, so are there any objections to any of these exhibits being admitted into evidence? All
So,
right.
Procedure,
Go
and
ahead.
Mr. Lilly, I'll just address this quickly. I thought, and I may have missed this, that we were going to get an email last night before 5 identifying the exhibits. Again, I'm not complaining about it. Maybe I missed it, but this is the first we've had it. I'm not sure we're going to put up much of a fight, but I think we should take a look at it. And I'm not going to do so again. If it's my error, maybe someone on our team will clarify this, but
I think what I asked for was Marina Coast Water District to do that because they had already had their witnesses testify.
Right, okay.
I don't think we've gotten to that with Marina, but having said that, you are being put a little bit on the spot here. So we will take the lunch break and you can look over those exhibits and then let us know after the lunch break if CalAm has any objections to any of those exhibits coming into evidence. That's only fair. So that will take care of that. Mr. Newdeck, excuse me, go ahead. Did I miss something? Okay. Mr. Newdecker, do you want to offer exhibit CEMEX1?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any objection to exhibit CEMEX1 coming into evidence?
If we could have the lunch break to confer on that. I do have some concerns about that exhibit, given that it is a unsigned report and there was not.
Okay. Yep. You don't need to state your objections now. We'll put you on notice that I'm going to ask you to answer that after the lunch break as well. Okay.
Mr. Lilly, can we excuse Lane Long?
I think so. Is Mr. Long, do you have a city to run in the meantime?
I have a city run. I have another board meeting that I sent my assistant city manager to, but he's texting. They thinks I
Okay.
need to drop in, but I can keep him
All right.
there if you need me.
Let's do this. I don't think we're going to have any questions for you. So if you can just at least be on call. I mean, if something comes up that we need you for, we'll take a break and I'll ask your attorneys to track you down. Can they track you down if we need you?
Yes, and I could definitely pop out of the board meeting and
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, you're excused, and thank you for testifying this morning. And again, thanks again for the city's hospitality yesterday. So Mr. Schwertzinger, and also I did have a couple of questions for Mr. Crooks. He's here. So if you can both come back when we're done with the lunch break, I would appreciate that as well. And then, so what we'll do is we're going to cover the exhibits we discussed this morning, Marina's exhibits and the 1CEMEX exhibit. And then we will circle back to the exhibits we covered yesterday. And I did get an email from Marina Coast attorneys, or I think paralegal, with the exhibits that Marina Coast wants to offer. I think the other attorneys covered some exhibits in cross-examination, and I'm not sure. I probably have my notes somewhere, but if you can check and see, but if somebody else had some cross-ex exhibits that they now want to offer to evidence that were discussed during the cross-ex of Marina Coast witnesses, we should cover that as well. So we will do that as well this afternoon.
Mr. Lilly, just
go ahead, Mr. Osias. We haven't heard from you today. Good morning or afternoon. No, it's still morning. Go ahead.
Good morning. I was just going to let your staff know and you that it looks like my eyes are bad, but 3 o'clock yesterday, an email from Mr. Terry of our office forwarded the list that we wanted to have admitted and answered the question in writing, I think, that Mr. Wilkins had asked about the Marina Coast Water District documents that we had downloaded and whether they were as downloaded and been altered. The answer was they were printed exactly as downloaded. So that was, anyway, that was sent to everybody yesterday.
Okay, and I got confused. I'm sorry, I was busy this morning preparing for Mr. Long's testimony. Yeah.
It may have been shortly after 3, but I know.
I was on the road yesterday at 3 o'clock.
Yeah. No, that's why I was mentioning.
I did print it. So we will go over that. You will have a chance to offer those exhibits. So what I don't have, I don't think, is any list from, and I was mistaken, I apologize. Coming from Mr. Terry, I had not focused on which firm he was with, but I don't think I have any list from MCWD of the exhibits it wants to offer into evidence, but I may have missed it. Did MCWD submit such a list?
I emailed the list around this morning, Mr. Lilly, not more than 30 minutes ago. I failed in my deadline. If the deadline was 5 p.m. yesterday, I failed in that, and I apologize.
All right, let me just make sure I have it. I could make some remark about you weren't on the site visit, so you could have done it yesterday, but I'm not going to. I'm sure you had plenty of other work. I do have that here, so I will look at that over the lunch break as well, and that's fine. My attempts at humor are bad, so just ignore them. But anyway, we will look at that list, and everyone has that. So we will cover all those exhibits. First, the Marina exhibits and that were covered today, and then we'll circle back to the exhibits that were covered on Monday and Tuesday. And I think then that will, and then as I say, I just a couple of questions for Mr. Crooks and Mr. Schwertzinger. So just some fairly minor things that came up during the site visit. And as I said yesterday, I'd rather ask the questions in this setting where we have a clearer record rather than out in the site where it was windy and hard to hear and all that. So we will circle back with that. So are we now good to go till after the lunch break? Okay, good. It's already noon. We've got a little bit of work to put all these things together. So I'm going to ask to come back at 1:15. If everyone can come back at 1:15, except for Mr. Long, you're excused as long as you're on call. And as a reminder, you have to log off totally for the noon lunch break and then log back on using the same Zoom credentials. So I will see you all at 1:15. Thank you.
Mr. Lilly.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh,
Lilly.
wait. Before everyone leaves.
I'm sorry
Tom
to raise this. I just wanted to note that we just received an email from Mr. Crooks, who is available this afternoon except 1:30 to 2.
1:30 to when?
To 2.
Okay, yeah, and we will, so we probably won't get through by 2, and if we, with the exhibits, and if we do, we'll just take a short break. That's the easiest. I don't want to start asking questions now. I have too many things going on, but thank you for letting me know, Mr. Donlin. And if necessary, we will take a break between whenever we're done with everything else and 2 o'clock. If we're not done, obviously, then we'll do that. So, and Mr. Crooks, thank you for letting me know as well.
Thank you.
I do understand that our witnesses have other duties, so that's certainly completely understandable. Anything else? All right, I'll see you all at 1:15. Thank you very much.
Thank you.